when I'm not trying to figure out the manliest way to order one of the Starbucks holiday drinks.
Yeah, let me go ahead and get a grande caramel brulee latte with coconut milk. Hold the whipped cream. Hold the sprinkles.
I like to answer questions I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. Do you recommend playing along to your phone using an aux cable playing Spotify? I ask because sometimes I play a super easy song, but it sounds crappy when I'm playing along to the original song. Maybe I'm just a pessimist in my relation to my own ability, or else my guitar and amp sucks. In my opinion, this is one of the best ways you can get really good quickly. Because a lot of times when you're just kind of playing along, just with yourself, just practicing different things, you might not realize exactly how you're sounding, but being put in the context of playing along with a band really forces yourself to lock your rhythm in, especially if it's something that you haven't really heard before and you're not super familiar with. I didn't really teach myself guitar playing this way, but I did teach myself piano and drums playing this way, and I noticed that I got better a lot quicker doing those things. And I know a lot of that is because I already was kind of proficient at one instrument, and it's easier to pick up ones after that. But it's really just kind of like the perfect exercise because you're locked in because the band is presumably pretty tight if they're on Spotify, right? So it's like the greatest musical metronome that you could ever play with. If you don't have tabs or a chord chart with you, you're relying on your ear to kind of find the right position to start playing in, which again is really like the best ear training that you could ever come up with. And that's what I really noticed playing along to like Spotify. Actually, I used Pandora back in the day when I was really first starting to play piano because there's really no better way to get a feel for just hearing where a chord progression is going than just being thrown into a song that you don't know anything about playing. You don't even know the artist that's coming up because, it's kind of randomly shuffling through different artists in the same genre. But just trying to lock in and find the song somewhere in there, I think is really the most valuable way that you can get better at an instrument. And again, that was me really trying to figure out chord progressions more than anything. And I think that's why like a lot of my playing, a lot of like my teaching and stuff is very heavily influenced on chord progressions. But specifically with the guitar, it's nice because it really helps you identify the key quickly. And then you can kind of solo do a lot of different like melodic stuff. Because again, without having that kind of backing track thing, you're kind of off in space. And if you want to maybe practice like, scales or anything like that, without the help of any kind of backing track or looper or metronome or anything, like I said, you're just out in space and you're just trying to figure stuff out, which again is still good practice, but you can be a lot more efficient when you have that musical metronome and also while you're challenging yourself at the same time. So you're right, it'll probably sound like you suck for the first couple times, but I think you'll be surprised at really how quickly you pick up just kind of like the combinations of chords that go into it. And then also too, it'll probably blow your mind how similar a lot of these songs are and how a lot of, again, depending on the genre totally, a lot of the songs are really just kind of like the same grouping of chords just in kind of different packages. So definitely try doing that, and if that doesn't help, then you're right, your guitar and your amp probably sucks. You need something better. Sean dresses like he has a Volvo. I don't know why this is funny, but it just seems really accurate. I don't know a lot of Volvo owners, but it just, like I said, it just seems like it's probably accurate. So I Googled Volvo owner, and this guy came up, which kind of shook me because last week I found myself wearing a sweater over a collared shirt for one of the few times, and it's almost like I don't remember putting a collared shirt and a sweater on over it, but I just found myself wearing it, and I was like, what's happening right now? So I think once I had some corduroy pants, then it's maybe time to go down the dealership, get myself a nice Volvo. Since you mentioned Chris Cornell, who is known for heavy use of the weirdest tunings, question for the next Q&A. From a compositional point of view, do you ever use alternative tunings to get some inspiration? If you tried that, is there any particular way you suggest to use alternative tunings? 100%. And as I'm becoming known as the master of dadgad on the internet, great tuning to start with. I think what is inspirational from a compositional standpoint is that it gets you out of the shapes that you usually use. Case in point, I'll link you to one of my songs called No Surrender. Which is actually dadgad, but with a G, so DGD, gad. And really just kind of like, I didn't have any idea of what I was doing when I went into the tuning, and then I just started kind of playing around, and I found the shapes just intuitively by ear, and really just kind of came up with something that I thought was pretty cool. So maybe check that out if you want to just kind of hear what I came up with just screwing around. But that's kind of the whole point is, I think a lot of times, specifically on guitar, because guitar is such like an instrument of shapes, you get locked into using the same shapes over and over again. So try any alternate tuning, and it's good to know. That's why it's great to know a lot of the names of the notes, because then you can never get too lost. But aside from that, tuning guitar to whatever, it doesn't have to be a popular one, just kind of like mess with one thing. Like one thing that is very helpful is maybe tuning your guitar to an open chord, because then you can kind of like play around with the chord. I mean, that's why like D-A-D, F sharp, A-D, something like that is just like an open D major. And then you can kind of like really just experiment with different big open voicings of an alternative tuning. So I think that's where really the most value is, aside from just getting open, chimier acoustic guitar sounds. But it can be on electric guitar or anything like that. It just gets you out of your shape kind of pattern prison and forces you to maybe do something different, which in my opinion and in my personal experience has kind of stoked different kind of creative compositional aspirations.
Why don't you take that guitar, turn it sideways, and stick it straight up your candy ass? Seriously though, get the F off of YouTube, you poser.
Listen here, space boy. I don't need to be chased off of YouTube by the likes of a salty commenter. Just wondering, unrelated topic, are we going to see the Emerald Riders update as it's made? Or will it emerge fully formed to stun the world with its epic medieval mastery ride? Love answering questions about the Emerald Riders, which is a great reason to get over on my Instagram, because I'll be posting more bits of Emerald Riders as they come along. And then kind of like I did last week, putting them together in one kind of vlogish type thing, because I think this Emerald Riders Celtic album that we're working on is probably going to be the biggest thing, and it'll really give YouTube a place of legitimacy on the internet. Hey Sean, loving the teasers on the Celtic album. I've been listening to some Irish music recently. Do you mind sharing some of your favorite tunes and artists? I love Paddy Riley. He's got a beautiful, strong voice. Oh yeah, by the way, would you consider throwing one or two drinking songs like Whiskey in the Jar or Wild Rover in your live set just for kicks and giggles? Cheers. You know, me and you were talking about doing a drinking song. I'd be the worst person in the world to write a drinking song, which probably means I need to write a drinking song. So we'll probably have something like that on there. Again, stay tuned. As far as what I've been listening to in my research, there is an Irish singer-songwriter named Christy Moore, which I will link you to. I think he's a great writer. He's got a very, very soulful Irish singer-songwriting voice. And I think if you like listen to it, it's a good kind of barometer for what I feel the difference between like folk music and like maybe like Irish folk music is. I'm sure I'm going to be called an Irish poser by basically every Irishman that has an internet connection at some point in time, but I have been jammed to some Christy Moore, so definitely click that link below if you want to check him out too.
Andreas plays a riff and it's sublimely lyrical. Sean plays the same riff and it sounds like a cat just jumped on his guitar.
Commented by the same guy who previously said,
Seriously, Sean, you're trying to school Andreas? Please don't bark out chord names to Andreas. You look silly. Andreas could sing the phone book and maybe people would weep tears of joy. When Andreas plays guitar, it's lyrical and melodic. When you play, it's usually satirical and chaotic.
So this is going to be the inaugural salty Brian Colangelo inspired comment of the week. Kudos to you if anybody got that reference. Sean, I practice dynamics and connecting chords with scales all the time when preparing for a gig to make my playing more interesting. Then when I'm playing live, it seems like I drift back into basic strumming. I play mostly solo acoustic gigs, by the way. Is this a psychological thing, or is my muscle memory just not where it needs to be yet? Great question, and this is something I've absolutely experienced myself. Specifically with acoustic guitar, you know, you might be kind of trying to do some cooler stuff, which when I think of cooler stuff on an acoustic guitar solo thing, I usually kind of mean like maybe different single note lines between the chords, something like that. And again, I've had it in my mind where it's like, all right, I'm going to play this song differently. I've been practicing it a little bit differently. I want to switch it up. But then once I get in the moment, I just kind of stick with like the basic chords. So there's a couple things that could be happening. One is, yeah, you probably just need to get your muscle memory, just practice it a little bit more, and you're more confident when you're going into it, because a lot of times it's a confidence issue. But one thing that I have done that really helps is a lot of times it's kind of difficult to monitor yourself correctly in an acoustic guitar singer-songwriter type forum. So when you go from like big open chords to maybe like, you single line things, there's a huge volume disparity, right? So I think a lot of that, and what I've experienced is like maybe I'm trying something with like some single note lines a little bit more, but if the whole song is kind of reliant upon me playing chords louder, you might benefit from having like a compressor pedal, or maybe having a board with compression on it. The nice thing about the mixing board I use is it has like a compressor built into it. And that way there won't be such a huge disparity between maybe kind of like single line riff, lick, arpeggio things and some of the chords that you're using. Also, being able to control your own dynamics with like a volume control or just, with your hands is something of paramount importance that you won't really even realize the full extent of until you are in a situation like that where you hear the difference sonically between just kind of like banging home those open chords and then maybe trying something a little more elegant or something like that. So I think just having your setup, however it is, whether it's a compression pedal, whether it's just messing with your monitoring situation a little bit, where you can hear yourself a little bit more, I think will kind of like empower you to kind of try some of those things you have been practicing. Because usually, in my experience, if it's something that I'm ready to play live, my muscle memory is generally in the ballpark of getting it right, even though now I just kind of like, I'll just take whatever risks because I'm so over it at this point. Again, nobody cares live. Nobody cares. But I do know exactly what you mean, where it's like, all right, I was planning on doing something, but I'm just not going to do it. And a lot of the time is because I can't really hear myself that well. So ever since I started really getting my monitoring situation fixed, using a compressor, I found myself, like I said, empowered to kind of like implement some of the things I've been practicing a little more fluidly live. Sean doesn't have Guitar Mojo. Sean is Guitar Mojo. Also, you keep saying that you're a big Radiohead fan, so I'm going to assign you some listening homework. It's from Tom York's score from Suspiria. So this is absolutely a great shout out to the man Tom York. In fact, we're going to make it our listening homework. The whole soundtrack, it's a big catalog of wildly different things, so it might not be something that grabs you if you listen to it from beginning to end on an album, but I want to link you to my favorite track on the album. It's called Unmade. Again, Tom York is just the man, huge Radiohead fan, and I think almost in a weird way, I kind of think that musically Tom York is a little bit underrated because I know it sounds very douchey to say, but I think Johnny Greenwood rightfully gets a lot of the credit, and the whole band is amazing. But Tom York as an actual player, aside from being a great writer and singer, is just the man. So huge Tom York fan. Check that out. If you have any questions or comments, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, the website, or the comment section, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.